Hello and welcome to this video of the Insight Stream. Today in this video I will be talking about the Kazan summit of the BRICS nations that has concluded. The summit started on 22nd of October 2024 and it lasted for 2 days and it ended on 24th of October. Now it is interesting to note that the Western nations and the news media, especially of the Western nations, has for the most part tried to ignore this summit altogether, and those that have been reporting about this summit are presenting it as a summit that was organized by the Russian president and not as a summit of the Western nations. Now, coming back to the summit, it is interesting to note that there has been a declaration that has been issued by the BRICS nations. This declaration contains 133 clauses, and this particular declaration does not contain any reference to the United States, the European Union, the US dollar, or the European euro. In fact, it seems that they have gone out of their way to avoid using any of these words, and on close scrutiny of this particular declaration, there are two interesting clauses that have grabbed the attention of many individuals who are interested in the field of geopolitics, and they are trying to keep up with the changes that are going on in the international geopolitics and the financial architecture of the world. Now, the two clauses that I am going to mention in this particular video are clause number 65 and the clause number 66 of the Kazan Declaration. Now, before I begin this particular video, I would like to stress the importance that has been placed by the BRICS nations on the importance of the World Trade Organization, and they have also made a close reference to the Bretton Woods Conference, and they have emphasized the importance of creating a system, a financial system and an architecture of the financial system which is similar to the Bretton Woods Conference agreements which were carried out, and they are currently in force all over the world. Now, coming to the clause, when reading the declaration closely, we observe that in clause 65 of the declaration, the BRICS nations have emphasized the importance of improving the financial commitment among the BRICS nations and increasing the trade volumes among the BRICS nations using domestic and local currencies. They have tried to mention it, or should I say, pass it as a mechanism which will enable faster, efficient, and a much more cost-effective alternative to the Western alternatives like SWIFT and other clearing systems. They have mentioned it as a mechanism which is intended to minimize the trade barriers between the BRICS members. Now, this clause promotes the use of local currencies and the use of the national banking infrastructure. The BRICS nations state that this particular initiative and this particular mechanism is purely voluntary in nature and is not binding upon any of the members of the BRICS nation, which has been described by the Russian media as the BRICS bridge. Now, moving on to the next clause, that is clause 66 of the Kazan Declaration, we see the importance of the possibility of connecting the BRICS currencies and establishing an independent cross-border settlement and depository system infrastructure, which has been described as a BRICS clear. Now, it all takes into account the mechanism that already exists all over the world, and the BRICS nations have described it, the declaration itself has described it as a complementary measure to the existing clearing systems all over the world. The current financial system all over the world is dominated by the Western nations, particularly the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Now, if we look at the past record, or should I say the history of the World Bank, it has always been headed by a US national, whereas the International Monetary Fund has always been headed by a European citizen, a West European citizen to be precise. Now, the clause recognizes the importance of the BRICS contingency reserve arrangement, which has clearly been set up as an alternative to the International Monetary Fund. Now, this particular initiative, the contingency reserve agreement, is aimed at providing the member nations of the BRICS agreement, or should I say the BRICS group, with short-term finances in order to avoid any kind of financial difficulties when settling the cross-border payments, or should I say the current account deficits which occur, or should I say are faced by the nations in the short term. Now, given the declaration, it also mentions that the sanctions which have been imposed by the Western nations, without mentioning any of the Western nations, that any sanction that is imposed by the Western nations is considered as illegal unless and until it has been approved by the United Nations Security Council. And also those sanctions which have been imposed by the Western nations which are not approved by the World Bank are also considered as illegal. Now, it is a clear reference to the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia and also on the Iranian nation. Most of the members of the BRICS nation have supported it, and there has been very little to no opposition about this declaration or to any of its clauses of this Kazan declaration. Now, the BRICS nations have also recognized the importance and have mentioned the new development bank for creating an investment mechanism to make it possible for the capital to flow among the various members of the BRICS nations. A BRICS nation, say for example, a nation like India, which has a developing industry, a service sector, a developing manufacturing sector, is in need of foreign direct investments. So any other member nation, say a Chinese firm or a Russian firm or perhaps any other Western BRICS member, is interested in investing in India, if going by the Western mechanism, or should I say the Western settlement systems, the foreign country investor will have to come to India and bring dollars with themselves if they want to invest in India, if they want to create a portfolio within India. With this new bank system, a nation which is a member of the BRICS can bring into India any other currency which is perhaps their own national currency or currency of any other BRICS member nation. It can enter the Indian capital markets, invest in assets, create their own portfolio without the use of the US dollar or the European euro or any such currency which is dominated by the Western nations. It also mentions the fact that if a member of the BRICS nation wants to settle the trade imbalances with other nations, it is made possible through mutual agreements and has avoided any such mention of the US dollar which may require the participation of a third party. When talking about the third party, I am referring to the banks which are located in the Western nations, most possibly in the American nation, for making it possible for the transactions to take place. With the new architecture that has been brought into place by the BRICS nations, it is possible for the two participating nations to settle the differences, the financial account differences in their local currencies with the use of local currencies without relying upon any other third party. Now, when we talk about the Western nations and the advantages that they have enjoyed over the past few decades, or should I say past century, is that they never had a proper competition and they were the only system that existed in the markets. There was no other alternative. Now they have a significant and a very dominant and well established infrastructure. Various organizations such as the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the SWIFT payments and clearing services, the dollar, the London insurance market, the Euroclear and the Clearview are some of the examples of the various financial infrastructure and the architecture which is used by all over the world, which is used by all the nations all over the world to settle their financial transactions among themselves, and it requires the involvement and how should I put it, the blessings of the Western nations. So any nation that does not agree with the foreign policy or the views or the political decisions that are taken by the Western nations can be cut off from this particular systems. which has forced many other nations to consider building alternatives to these particular systems. The BRICS nations, although are formed as a trading bloc, it is very clear from the decisions that they have taken. The hints are there, the message is there, but there is no clear mention about BRICS nations acting as rivals, or should I say creating rival systems to the foreign payment mechanism which are owned by the Western nations. It only states that these systems that are being created by the BRICS nations are to act as complementary mechanisms to the existing financial architecture which is owned by the Western nations. Of course, this is not true. This entire system is being created as a rival, as a competition, and perhaps as an alternative to the Western nations, for those nations who want to separate their foreign policies, who want to pursue a path of financial and political, geopolitical autonomy independent of the Western nations. Such an alternative has given an option to the rest of the nations all over the world to follow a different path, a path which is separate from the path which is followed by the Western nations. A nation which is perhaps a developing country or an underdeveloped country requires the blessings of the Western nations. It requires the US dollar, it requires the European euro in order to trade, in order to support its economy with foreign trade. The BRICS alternative has given such nations an option to exercise, to follow a separate path, a path which does not employ, or should I say, does not mean compromising their foreign policy or subordinating their foreign policy to the Western nations. It will be interesting to see how the geopolitical landscape of the world develops in the coming few years. But the writing on the wall is very clear that alternatives to the Western financial architecture have arrived. They are being finalized, they are being created, they are being tested. There has also been some talk about the creation of a BRICS currency, although there has been no official confirmation or denial of any such mechanism being created, any such currency being created. But it is most certain that the BRICS currency that is being talked about, if created, will be a currency that is backed by a basket of commodities and services which are owned and produced by the BRICS nation, BRICS member nations. Also, it must be mentioned that BRICS grain exchange services are being created. It has been talked about for some time now. If ever created, it will allow the BRICS nations and the member nations of the BRICS to trade in the production, to trade the production of their local grains and other food products that are being produced, and decide upon the prices which are convenient to the members of the BRICS nations and not be dominated by the will and whims and the whimsicals of the Western markets. It will be interesting to see how the geopolitical landscape shapes in the coming years. So that is all for today's episode, or should I say today's video. It has been some time before I uploaded this video. The reason being I was a bit busy with my other personal activities and work. I hope I will be able to continue with publishing more of these videos. And this video was published in English. The reason being I have received several messages and emails from my viewers that they are requesting me to publish videos in English and Hindi as well. So this is the first attempt at publishing a video in English. In case I have made any mistakes or erred in the facts that I have mentioned, please do so mention them in the comments. And I thank you once again for joining and tuning into this channel. We will be meeting soon. Thank you.